Welcome to episode 95 of I Thought I Knew How, a podcast about knitting and life and all sorts. I'm your host, Anne Frost, and this episode was recorded on February 24th, 2023. I am back from my latest trip to the UK, and so I'll be bringing you a couple of interviews over the next 2 episodes with some of the fiber artists I was able to meet while I was there. The first is an interview with Elizabeth Johnston, a spinner, knitter, and designer in Shetland who I have wanted to have on the show for years now. Elizabeth very graciously sat down with me a few weeks ago and we had a nice chat about her work. Before we start, I'd like to thank my new patrons, Keisha, Karen, Mahaya, and Sharon for becoming producers of the show over on patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow. You and all of my lovely patrons are the main drivers for me to keep producing the show. I will always be curious about knitting and fiber crafts. I don't see that changing. But compiling the information and sending it back out to my fellow curious crafters happens because you all have your hand on my back. And I thank you. I have opted to make a change to Patreon. In the past, when someone signed on to be a patron, they were charged on the day they signed up and then again on the first of the month. That's just how Patreon did it. So if you signed up on January 27th, you'd get charged that day and then again on February 1st and every first of the month after that. Patreon has finally updated the way they do things so that it gives us creators the option to have it work more like a typical subscription. Those of you who are already patrons, you are going to continue to be charged on the first of each month. You're already in that first of the month charging cycle. But going forward, those of you who sign up as a patron over on patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow will be charged on the day you sign up and then on that day the following month and every month going forward. So if you sign up on the 3rd of March, you'll be charged on the 3rd of every month going forward. If you sign up on the 29th through the 31st of any month, you'll be charged on the last day of the month if that month does not have that day, if that makes sense. So if you sign up on the 31st of March, for instance, in February, you'll be charged on the 28th or 29th, depending on if it's a leap year. And in June, you'd be charged on the 30th. So anyway, finally, Patreon has figured out how to avoid that potentially quick second payment. New patrons will just get charged every month like any other subscription service. Good job, Patreon, finally getting that figured out. Again, if you're already a patron, you're not going to be affected by this. Your payment will still be the first of the month. This is just information for those who maybe want to become patrons. As always, many thanks to Knit New Haven and Morehouse Merino Flock for sponsoring the podcast. The day after this episode goes live to the wider world, I will be heading down to Knit New Haven to pick up my brand new spinning wheel. Linda made the process so easy. We chatted back and forth via text a few times. She ordered the wheel I wanted, and like 6 weeks later, I heard that my freshly made wheel is in the shop waiting for me. I talk about Knit New Haven often as a store for knitters, but it's also a wonderful spinner-friendly destination as well. Pay them a visit the next time you find yourself in New Haven, Connecticut. The Morehouse Merino Flock Group is in the midst of knitting the Strength Within shawl. I am constantly late to the party there, but it's no big deal with the Flock Group. I can log in when I want and cast on using the instructional videos Erin has put together for each of the projects. And when I need a bit of help, I can log into any of the online knitting times and get the help I need no matter what I am working on. Find out more about this lovely online knitting community by visiting morehousemerinoflock.com. As I said earlier, Elizabeth Johnston is someone I've wanted to have on the show for a few years now. She is highly regarded in Shetland for her skills and served as patron of Shetland Wool Week in 2018. Her work appears regularly in the Shetland Wool Week Annual and can be found on Ravelry. She also designs beautifully in both Fair Isle and lace, including applying both to modern wearable shapes. Elizabeth Johnston is a skilled spinner. It is her preferred craft. If you can, you need to get your hand on some of her wool, which she produces under the Shetland Handspun label. I do have favorites among the machine-spun Shetland wools, I will admit to that. But Elizabeth's yarn is my absolute favorite of all yarn, period. All yarn. You just cannot beat a yarn produced from a specially chosen fleece that has been prepared and spun with the amount of thought and experience that Elizabeth brings to the wheel. It's just divine. And with that, please enjoy this conversation with Elizabeth Johnston.
So I don't have too many memories of starting to knit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember learning to knit. I don't remember what I knitted first. I remember probably about 7 or 8 knitting small children's Fair Isle mittens. My grandmother knitted the ribs.
Mm-hmm.
I knitted the Fair Isle. Somebody helped me with the colours. And from there, the next thing I remember knitting was Fair Isle yokes, which I hated. But yeah, the mittens was the first thing I knitted for a while, and it wasn't knitting as a hobby.
Uh-huh.
Even at that age, you were knitting and selling.
Mm-hmm.
So it was brilliant pocket money.
Mm-hmm. As you were learning to knit mittens, was there sort of like a family pattern that just everyone was doing? No?
No. You started with the small hats.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you started with. And in your head you had 2 1 2 5 3 1 5 5 3 1.
Uh-huh.
That was the one little hat, and you were mirroring it round.
Okay.
So once you start it, you go. It grows, and you know it.
Right.
So most
and those
people,
numbers, was that the Fair Isle pattern?
That's the Fair Isle pattern.
Yeah. Yeah.
2 of one colour, 1 of another colour, 2 in another colour, and you didn't say colours. It was just
2
and 2.
Yeah.
Next row it was 5. I think there was 2 5s and then a 3 and then a 1.
Mm-hmm. And that's how people memorize the patterns.
That's that little block of a hat.
Yeah.
The other easy one was the star, small star, and then you built up, and you knitted the patterns that you liked.
Okay. Now you're just rattling those off, but as a child, as you're learning that, would an adult write down the numbers for you, or would they just tell you?
And there's graphed.
Okay. Yeah, so you'd have the graph book.
You'd have the graph book.
Okay.
They were working with graph books by then.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it probably would have been told.
Just the numbers.
Or you would have a piece to copy off.
Okay.
And then it's in your head and you don't need the piece.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a good giggle the other day. Someone had bought a hat and posted it on Facebook and said, "Can someone write the pattern for me? I want to knit this hat."
She had it.
And I know, I was like, the hat, just knit the hat. It's right there. That's the pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. Another one was it came up online. Is it a scarf that Jimmy Perez maybe wore, or somebody on a TV program, and they wanted the pattern for it.
Yeah,
you got it.
It's right there. It's the picture.
It's right there.
Yeah, that's the all creatures great and small. Same thing.
People
are posting.
That was that one. That was really,
so
really good.
How do I do this? What's the pattern? It's you got the picture right there.
Yeah, just pause the telly and knit.
Anyway, we digress.
We do. We don't need that much.
So you would take it to you had said earlier you were living in Lerwick at this point. You grew up in Lerwick.
Yeah.
So you were right in town.
Yeah.
So you would take your gloves or mittens in to be sold there.
We took it to the shop to be sold.
Yeah.
We took it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It was our produce.
Yeah.
We went, sold it.
And then were you allowed to keep all the money from it for your pocket money? You didn't have to give money back to your parents at all?
No.
No.
No. I didn't get pocket money that week.
Okay.
Any week that I sold, but no, I didn't pay for my grandmother did the ribs. I didn't pay for the yarn for that. I didn't pay her for knitting them.
Mm-hmm.
I used, wherever I was, I used the yarn that was in the house. I didn't pay for that.
Yeah. Do you remember what you were paid for them?
I can't remember.
No. Do you remember like the equivalent? Like if you got your pocket money for that week from selling, what you could go get for it?
I would, I had it quite worked out, although I didn't realise I did. I would knit the mittens until I needed money.
Okay.
because I hated knitting the thumbs.
Mm-hmm.
Same I can tell you about the gloves too. Don't knit gloves. So when I needed money, I would knit the thumbs and then go sell them. So I might go with 6 pair at a time.
Uh-huh.
And I would be getting 6pence, which is what, 2.5p now, for pocket money a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I know 1 pair of gloves would be pay a lot more than 2.5p.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go away maybe half a dozen.
Uh-huh.
So I was sort of onto a good thing.
Yeah.
I only figured that out after, but I was onto a good thing. But you learned the garment. You learned how to knit a mitten, which helps when you knit socks. You just need to learn the heel, and there's no thumbs.
So you much preferred socks then?
I never knitted socks. I've knitted a few now, but no, we never knitted socks. They weren't a saleable item.
Okay.
The wool doesn't last in socks.
Mm-hmm.
This
was before
wool.
the nylon blends.
Wool, yeah. So I learnt that in mittens, and then my aunt decided that I needed to learn how to knit a pair of gloves, Fair Isle gloves. So I did. So I learnt the fingers. And when I was finished, the decision was, I'm not doing that ever again. There's so many ends. You pick up a pair of mittens and give it a wobble, and you've got all these ends. 2 for every finger. And there's 10 of them, so that's 20 extra ends.
Yeah, that's a lot.
My aunt said, I said, what do I do with this? She said, you put them in. I said, I'm not doing this again, and I didn't. But I learned how to knit fingers.
Okay.
So now I teach knitting fingers.
Yeah.
I don't do it myself.
That's right. That's right. Yep. Teach other people to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said that you were knitting yokes.
Yeah.
That was for your mother?
Yeah.
Yeah. And where was she selling on to?
She had, you would be selling whatever was needed, whatever the shops were buying.
Okay.
You would be selling some to some private customers.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother had orders from a shop in Princess Street in Edinburgh.
Okay.
And that was a better price than selling to the shops in Larwick.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 3 range of prices, a netter's price, a wholesale price, and a retail price.
Mm-hmm.
So the price for that was better. How she got that order, I have no idea. But she used me and she asked me and my sister if we would knit. Not really. She told us, "Here, you're knitting a yoke." She paid us well, but I hated yokes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we were wearing yokes that time, and you would be given a yoke at Christmas maybe, and you couldn't say you weren't wearing it. So I would be sitting wearing a yoke jumper, knitting a yoke, and I would prefer to have been out with the boys. Mm-hmm. But the pay was good.
You didn't enjoy knitting them or wearing them?
No.
Would you have rather had just a plain jumper or a full Fair Isle jumper? Or
a full Fair Isle or a plain, that would be far better.
You just didn't like the look of the yoke. I
didn't like the yoke.
Was it not in style at the time?
Oh, it was high fashion.
Was it? You just did not like it?
I didn't like it. I didn't like it.
So your mother had orders from a shop in Princess Street in Edinburgh. Yeah. Was it always for yoke jumpers?
It was always yoke jumpers.
Always yoke jumpers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they would recommend the colours in that case?
They wanted a yoke that matched a tartan. So we knitted yokes that matched tartan.
Which is funny because people don't really wear tartans up here.
No, we don't wear tartan.
Yeah.
We're not Scots.
So do you think that it was tourists that were buying like a tartan and a yoke to go with it then?
Yeah. But I mean, they all went to Edinburgh, so
who knows?
There's the tartan capital.
Yeah. I'm just curious, if the people who are actually Scots in Edinburgh are like, why are we wearing yokes with our tartans all of a sudden?
No,
or
tourists.
If it's Americans
tourists.
Or something coming over and being like,
Yeah.
all this Scottish wool, let's buy it all.
Yeah.
They don't understand that
They
it's
don't
coming from
yeah.
different places and different
Yeah.
different cultures, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were some
Interesting.
patterns that suited to match to a tartan,
Mm-hmm.
to the square
Mm-hmm.
pattern, and we used tartan colours. So
that was done. That was done for you.
That was it.
The color thinking
That
was
was
done
it.
for you. Mm-hmm. You also knit lace.
yeah.
Yeah. And how young were you when you started knitting lace?
I knitted. Oh, the first piece I knitted in lace was a lace cardigan for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been somewhere around 9, 10.
Mm-hmm.
I was in primary school, so I wasn't 12. I should be younger than 12. So you're learning, you're moving from one garment to the next, and you're learning the next garment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you're learning a garment. You're not learning to knit lace or knit Fair Isle. You're learning garments. You're designing.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Although we never thought of it as designing.
Mm-hmm.
So you're doing mittens and gloves. So from there you can move on easy to socks.
Mm-hmm.
You start with yoke, and it's part of a jumper. Although the body is knitted on the machine, you're getting familiar with. So you knit a cardigan to yourself, and you're learning how to knit a cardigan, a jumper, a lumbercoat. You're learning shape, and you're learning sleeves. It's that's what you're learning, not specifically the knitted stitch that you're using. That lace jumper took me, and it was a cardigan. It took me about a year to knit it.
Mm-hmm.
When it was finished, it didn't fit me, and I hated the colours that I had chosen. So my sister got it. So that was the first lace piece I did, and then I was sitting knitting yokes, and I hated yokes, and my mother sort of put me off Fair Isle. Mm-hmm. She was actually complimenting me, but she didn't explain that, and I didn't ask. So I'm knitting yokes. She has to critique it, and she's looking at one I did, and she's looking at the inside, and she says, your inside's better than your outside. And I thought, so I can't knit Fair Isle. But if your inside is good, your outside is better.
Mm-hmm.
So she was actually complimenting me, which I didn't take.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to get out of knitting the yoke. I thought if I got her to teach me how to use the machine, machine, then I could knit bodies and she could knit more of the yokes. Mm-hmm. And that sort of worked a little bit. She did teach me how to use the machine. But she preferred to do the machine knitting and give us more yokes to do.
Maybe she didn't like doing the yokes.
Maybe she didn't. So yeah, but it's all a learning process, and it's not. It's a learning process that points to a profession, not a hobby. Mm-hmm. So we were learning designing, we were learning garments. You knitted a garment and you repeated it and repeated it and repeated it until you knew it, because it was income. It was always income.
Right.
You knitted some for yourself, yes, but everybody was knitting to sell.
Yeah. And
it was good income. At that time, wages were not really high. Mm-hmm. You could live on a wage, but if you had something extra, that was icing on top of the cake.
Nice. Yeah.
Women didn't really go out to work at that time, and certainly children didn't. Yeah. as young as 8 and 9 and 10 didn't go out to work, but it was all income. It all added to the house. Mm-hmm. So it was. We were learning to knit professionally, although we didn't figure that out at the time.
Yeah.
So something that we could always come back to. So, yeah, knitting onto lace. The next, probably the first proper piece of lace I knitted was a hat for my eldest daughter when she was born.
Mm-hmm. And how did you learn to do that then?
That was, Mum couldn't knit hats, so I had 2 aunts that I could reach on the phone occasionally, because fewer people had phones.
Yeah.
And there were no mobiles. So I got instruction over the phone, and I went and did that bit, and then I phoned again and got another bit of instruction over the phone. So it was going into, you had to get it into your head to keep knitting. There was no pattern.
No pattern, yeah. You had to envision what they were telling you to do. Yeah.
So once you'd done one, you could do another one.
Okay.
Not a problem.
And what is, now I had a class with Elizabeth Williamson and we did like a little lace hap.
Yeah.
And we got off on a tangent one day, and I think we came up with 7 different ways that you could knit a lace hap, like different directions, and you know, what's your preferred?
I do outside
method?
in.
Outside in. Starting with the lace edging. I would only
consider, start with the lace. Try to finish that lace edge before you start picking up for the quarters, or I call them quarters. Elizabeth would call them boards.
Boards, yep.
Same thing. In patterns, written patterns, it's borders. But we call them quarters because there's 4 of them.
Right.
But at the same time, we knitted 2 quarters together. We still call them quarters. You gotta, if I'm knitting it inside out, you would end up with a lace edge, and you've got to knit that whole lace edge. It's a long knit.
Forever.
So many, you change needles so many times. That makes it slow. But I learned outside in. So now I try really hard to knit the whole of that lace edge before I pick up. It's easy to knit half of it and pick up and knit 2 quarters, and then you've got to go back to the lace edge again. But it breaks it up.
Do you always do a plain garter center when you do yours?
For a hap, yeah.
Yeah.
For a hap. A hap's a standard, the old shell.
Yeah.
In the quarters and a plain centre. You can put a pattern in if you want. And occasionally you would, but.
Have you done any fine lace knitting?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
It's easier to do it with lace weight yarn. Jumper weight's a bit thick, but if you're doing a half hap, jumper weight's good. The fine lace is better with the more pattern in it, and it's nice to plan a shawl. And now it's a shawl.
Now,
not a hat.
What were the nicer shawls called when you were younger? Was it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's one of those things that it depends where you are and who you ask. What the fine lace shawls were called. You know. Yeah. Fine lace shawl, fancy hap, fine hap. You know, I've heard.
Fancy hap is probably the one that we would.
That you would have said.
We would use.
Yeah. You knit Fair Isle and you knit lace.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like a mysterious unicorn here on the islands because everyone seems to have their preference that they stick with. But you never know what you're going to get from Elizabeth. If it's going to be, you know, recently in the Wool Week annuals, this last time, there's that beautiful Fair Isle jacket that you have.
That's a nice big knit. If you want to get familiar with knitting Fair Isle, knit that one.
That is the one. That's, because it has the fronts that hang open loose. And before that, it was a lace cardigan in DK weight. Yeah. Which I still don't have on my needles yet. I have the yarn for it. I need to get that on the needles. I can't remember what was before that. Was it another lace jumper?
It was the big shawl.
The big shawl, yeah. That one was a fine lace one.
It was in lace weight. I copied an old shawl. And it's big. I mean, it's big.
It's big.
I copied the lace. I copied it. It was knitted in lace. I copied it in lace. And then I calculated the yarn for fine lace. In fact, I think I put in maybe 6, 7, 8 different choices of yarn.
Okay.
That you could knit it in from Shetland, and fingers crossed, calculated the amount of yarn you needed. And then I started one in the cobweb lace.
Oh, wow.
To check that I had it right. So you knit a quarter of the lace, and you know how much lace yarn you're going to take for the whole lot.
Yeah.
You knit 1/4, and you know how much yarn you're going to need for the 4 quarters. And then you can do a section off the centre, or just guess it for the centre. So I did that. I did a quarter of the lace and 1/4. And I guessed the rest to check the amount of yarn I needed, and it was fairly good.
Yeah.
So how many years ago was that?
What would have that been?
I still haven't finished
4 or
that.
5 years ago?
Yeah,
Okay,
I still
well,
haven't finished it. I'm on the centre.
You're in good company.
On the centre. But I wanted a sample in the fine yarn as well, because you go places and you need samples of things that you've done. So I need a sample of a huge cobweb shawl.
That's not enough for you, Elizabeth. You've got the Fair Isle and you have the lace, but you're also very well known as a spinner.
Well, that's what I prefer to do, is spin.
Yeah. When did you start spinning?
I was 29 when I married. Married women really didn't go out to work. There were no nurseries, play schools. You had young children. You stayed at home.
Yeah.
And I finished jumpers. That was the era of the plain jumpers.
Okay.
So grafting the neck and the cuffs on, and finishing ends. Mind-boggling, intriguing work. Paid well. You were sitting and you weren't doing it. You couldn't earn any other way, and it was good income, and it wasn't knitting yokes. But I couldn't afford a knitting machine, or I could have been knitting it, and that was better paid.
Right.
But I did. I got a machine from one of the shops. They taught you how to use it, how they wanted their garments knitted, and then you got the machine home to use. So I did that. I knitted on the knitting machine. It's better pay, but it's more mind-numbing. When I decided that, when the children, the oldest two went to school, I decided I could take a job, and I could get rid of the knitting machine. Oh, it was bliss. But then I thought, well, I need a hobby. Never had a hobby. I could have a hobby, and there was a spinning wheel in Anderson and Company's window. Okay. You know, on the street. A Haldane knitting machine and a spinning machine. Spinning wheel. I've got knitting machines on the brain. A Haldane spinning wheel. I thought I could have that. I could spin. When I was small, even before I went to school, agricultural show at Coningsborough once a year, and they have the Shetland Wool. It's still there, the Shetland Wool. And there would be folk doing different crafts, and there was always 2 women sitting and spinning, and I would stand. The Nuke was open for 2 hours in the afternoon, and I would stand between the both of them and watch.
Oh, wow.
I was too shy to say I want to do that, and they assumed, because I knew them, that if I'd wanted to learn I would have asked. But I was too shy. So I figured that now I could learn to spin, and didn't have anybody to show me by then. My uncle said if I didn't find somebody to learn me, he could tell me what to do. Okay. But I did. I found a night class, and after a couple of years of practicing, I had knitted stuff, and I had more yarn than I could use. So I thought, well, what am I going to do with it? And so you go back to, you sell it. So from there I started, and it's just built up. over the years. But spinning is what I would prefer to do rather than knitting.
So where were you selling it at first?
I set up a shop for myself and got other people that did crafts to allow me. It was hard sometimes to get them to part with some of the stuff that they did. So it was Shetland crafts that I sold, and it worked slowly. I didn't earn too much from it to start with, but it got better.
Was that there in town?
That was in Commercial Street. And then I moved house, bought a house at the south end of Lerwick that had a shop premises on the ground floor.
Okay.
And living above.
You had premises on the street that you were selling out of, and so it was your yarn and it was other craftspeople's items that you were selling there.
Yeah.
And when was this? Was this like the 80s, the 90s,
This
the
was
aughts?
I started in 1987.
What was tourism like here at that point? Was there a lot of tourists?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. A lot from all over the world.
Okay.
Huge amount of Japanese and Americans, and low countries in Europe. You would get a lot from there.
Okay.
And then the very south of England, you got a lot of people from the very
Interesting.
south of England. Not many Scottish people. Sort of
Too close.
too close.
I have made no secret of the fact that I love your wool. Your yarn is just magnificent. It is the softest of the Shetland wool that you can get your hands on. And I'm curious about, because I am a new spinner, Elizabeth. I have my wheel is on order. I'm hoping it will be there by the time I get home. Is it the fleeces you're choosing, or is it the skill of the spinner? What is it that makes your yarn so wonderful?
It's both of that, says she modestly.
No false modesty here. None at all. I want facts.
Yeah, it's and probably a couple more things. You need to choose the fleece, the right fleece, for the purpose you're going to use the yarn. So if you want, like the socks that I never knit, you need that rougher back end of the Shetland fleece will do your socks.
Okay, so it'll wear longer.
It'll wear. If you pick the right quality, it doesn't even shrink. It's more of a hair than a wool.
Okay.
You want what's up at the neck or below the neck to the back of the shoulders on some fleece will be good for fine lace. Then there's a little bit further back is lace weight, and then the rest is jumper weight. So we can get it all out of one fleece. So you need to know the qualities, you need to know the fleece, and you choose the right quality of yarn. You'll get some scratchy ones in, and you want to avoid them. So yeah, that's the first. You need to know your fleece. It's not a fleece that's been bred to have a uniform quality in it. And it never will. Some have got fleece, have got animals that will give you a standard lace weight for most of that fleece. But that takes years and years and years of breeding, and they've got to know what they're doing.
Right.
For the most of the breeds, it's intermittent what you get, and it depends where they're grazing. Whether it's on the tops of the hills or down on the green grass, you get totally different fleece.
Oh wow.
And they're outside all year, so it has to be a fleece that keeps them alive. If rain gets inside that fleece, they die of hypothermia. So you need a specific animal that's not going to let that water in to the skin. So there's a whole lot about the breeding of the animal first.
Right.
And that's not my problem.
So
I just need to choose the right fleece for the project, for the yarn I'm looking at.
Yeah, so that's a good point to keep in mind. Like, they could breed for the kindly fleeces always, but that puts the animals in danger, actually,
It does a little, yeah. They
So you
need
have
to be.
find the balance.
They need to be lower down. They can't be on the top of the hills, and we've got a lot of hilltops.
There's a lot of hills, yeah.
So all the different qualities of that yarn is going to stay. Of that fleece is going to stay, just because of the terrain that we have. So they'll stay, and we need them all. We don't want just fine lace. And
Yeah,
lace
well,
weight.
as she said, yeah, they all have
We want
a
it's all got a
purpose.
use.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, picking the right fleece for what you do, and then the preparation is another big part. And the hand preparation means there's less damage to the fibre.
Okay.
If you go to the mills, the preparation is hard on the fleece.
Yeah, they just feed it into the machines.
It's fed into machines.
Yeah.
And then washed, and then tumble dried,
Mm-hmm.
and then torn apart again,
Uh-huh.
and through the carders. That's the damage
Okay.
that happens. So that gives you the hand process versus the machinery, the mill process, gives you the difference in the yarn, the biggest difference in the
Okay.
yarn.
Interesting.
And then you gotta put the right twist in that yarn, and the right twist in the ply.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
I have a lot of learning ahead of me.
Have you had any lessons?
I have had two drop spindle lessons.
Yeah.
And I had one lesson on a machine this fall after I left for Wool Week. Got home and the New England Fiber Festival was going on, and had a lesson on a wheel, and it was the first time I'd had a proper lesson on a wheel, and it was the first time I enjoyed spinning.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay,
Yeah.
I understand the appeal of this now.
So you're, before you do any more lessons, just set that wheel going and pedal it slowly,
Okay,
without it turning back on itself.
right.
Once you can do that and do something else at the same time, then your foot's got it,
Uh-huh.
and slow. So you're putting in less twist.
Okay.
So your hands have time to work,
Okay.
and you're away.
Okay. I do have some fleeces and roving and things like that, because you have one classes with a drop spindle and you think you're going to take over the world.
Yeah.
So I figure all of that's just going to be processed, and it's going to look awful, and I'm just okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
it doesn't matter.
and I'll just keep learning.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what your yarn is to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get that draft, and what the yarn is doesn't matter, as long as you get that draft.
Uh-huh.
And then it's practice.
Just
So you
practice.
have permission to just go play.
Just go. Okay.
Go play.
And I will say, you do still produce wool, and it is still for sale. You have a website where people can find it, or they can contact you.
I have a website.
Uh-huh.
It's a front page.
Yeah.
And
we just email you and say.
just email me. You just email me, and it's a conversation.
Uh-huh.
If you email me right now, I don't have any yarn to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a minimal amount. A very minimal
I
amount.
tried to buy you out last time I was here. I see some right there, though.
That's it. What's in there? What's in that small box is it. I ended this last Wool Week with not 1 inch of handspun yarn left. But I had nothing left.
I tried.
Like,
You were so kind. You came and taught for the tours and brought your yarn, and I just stood back and I waited for people. And some people bought, and then I was like, all right, you guys had your chance.
well, this year I had one customer who did the same thing.
Uh-huh.
She bought some, and then she stood back and she watched, and on the last day, she was in my last class before the market.
Uh-huh.
At the end of that class, when everybody was finished, she scooped the whole lot up and she said, I'll have that.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to the market tomorrow.
She's like, maybe you're not going to the market tomorrow.
So, yeah, I had one hank here at home, which was a thicker yarn.
Uh-huh.
And I said to her, all I have left is one hank of yarn that's thicker. And she just but I would have bought it. I says, but it's a different thickness from that. She says, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, use it for something else.
So I packed up for the market the next day. I took samples of pieces I'd done, and I took patterns I had that I sell. And I thought, I'll have a nice day just talking to people, because I have no yarn to sell.
Yeah.
And that woman came along and she said, did you bring that hank of yarn? And I said, yeah, I did. So she bought it. So that was it gone. But I sold patterns. I did sell a lot of patterns. But yeah, I had a nice day talking to people. I'm a hand spinner. I've got no handspun yarn to sell.
Sorry, you're just too good at it. Word's gotten out. People know now. You know, well, they've known for ages, I'm sure. But I think your yarn is a dangerous yarn, because it's a yarn that you try and you just think, oh, this is different. This is nice. This is really nice. I had one customer who, a gentleman, who decided that he would buy a kit from me, one of the Wool Week ones, for his wife for Christmas. Okay. And I think he contacted me in maybe October, September or October, and I didn't have any left. So I emailed back and said I didn't have any yarn left for that kit, and I gave him colours in other yarns that he could get. He emailed back and he said, no, you misunderstand. I want your yarn. But I don't have. So I said I would see what I could do if I could spin a bit more, and so I did. I got a kit put together through November, and I sent it. It got to him, and he opened it and had a look, and he said, this is for a Christmas present, but it might not make it to Christmas. And the next day the wife emailed me and said, your yarn's beautiful. So yeah, there's a few stories like that, which is just nice. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. I wait, you know, when the Shetland Wool Week hat comes out, I just wait for you to say, like, I have kits. And then I'm like, you know, fast as I can to get an email out. I want one. Save me one. And then I just sit there with my fingers crossed for days waiting to hear back from you. That I shouldn't be selling it this hard. It's so wonderful though, but now I'm going to have more people trying to get their hands on it. Then it doesn't almost exist. It's wonderful. So to get the stock up though is a problem. Yeah. Because you take a fleece and you spin. I need to spin a quantity at one time. There's no point in spinning a small amount of one colour. So I would spend a week spinning one fleece, and then another week and another fleece, and before I get like the 8, 9, 10 colours or more that would give me a range of colours, that's like 3 months. Oh, yeah. Then I'm ready to do something with, and then I need to dye some, so you need a bigger quantity of colours. So that's another 3 months. So it's like 6 months before I can get any amount of stock up. And then we come around and buy it all up again. Gone. Gone. So if you are approached to do a kit for the Shetland Wool Week hat by the designer, you know, the patron of the year says, Elizabeth, I want some colours. Are you just flat out preparing? That was just Wilma that came and asked. So were you just flat out though, trying to get some stock up ahead of it? Well, Wilma phoned and said, I want to do your yarn for one of the colours. And what did she's wise. What did I say? I don't have very much. So I took what I had that I could maybe reproduce. And Wilma is, I mean, what Wilma does with colour is magical. Yeah. So there's 5 colours in that first hat, and I think I gave her 6 colours. Okay. And she came up with that hat that went on the front of the pattern, and
sold like crazy. But I had a bit of time, and I prepared for, I think I prepared for 30 kits.
How many did you end up selling though?
I had more than 30 orders before the pattern came out. They put up the colours. They put a photo of the colours.
Oh, okay. And people just reached out and said.
And in 2 days, I had more than the 30. And COVID had hit, but I did just get into the brokers.
Okay. So you
Like,
got some new
please.
fleeces. Please, I need more.
So yeah, and that's just how it went right through. And then I had kits out for the pattern I had in the wool in the annual at the end of the year. So that was Oma. And then Wilma was patron
Again.
again. So she says again. I said, "No, I don't have any yarn." So that was a bit more of a trauma to get the colours, reproduce the colours that she used in that one. But I did okay, and I limited the number.
Okay.
I said, I think to begin with, there will only be a set number, but they didn't sell. I didn't sell as many of those as I had the first one.
Oh,
The first one was really popular, and then this last one, Linda did. She didn't. She went with different suppliers, and she went with 2 new ones, Esther O and Laxdale. But I had orders before.
People already saying before they even saw colours.
I'll have an order for put me on the list for a kit.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking I'm not in on this one. And I couldn't reproduce what she had. So
you did your own colorway.
I got the pattern.
Yeah.
Just before it came out.
Okay.
And did my own. And 2 of the colours I had quantity of.
Okay.
So that helped. But again, I just set a set number.
Well, I've said before, and I hope that you are taking me seriously when I say I want one. Like, just count me in going forward.
But how many hats do you need?
I need every hat knit in Elizabeth's wool. Like, it's just that straightforward. No, I do have a sickness for knitting the hats.
It is a sickness.
It is.
It is a
The
sickness.
Shetland Wool Week hats. So the first time I came was 2019, and I knit all the hats that had been released.
Yeah. You went in a rota of easiest to hardest.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And those I didn't go by the colors that were recommended. I just sort of like had yarn and I used.
But that's the sort of the point of putting out a hat.
Yeah.
That folks should knit their own colours.
Play with it.
Knitting Fair Isle is not about knitting the stitches or knowing the garment. It's about putting colours together.
Yeah.
So you got to practice at putting colours together.
Yeah. And it was a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
And I got to, use there was a little bit left from this hat and a little bit left from that hat, and then they got to go together and make a new one. And then with the Katie's cap, I was like, okay, I'm going to be sensible this year. I'm just going to knit one. Like, good thing, I knit all the other ones, so now I just have to knit this one. Well, that one was such a fun knit. And a quick knit too. You didn't really have to catch anything, or it was just a fun quick knit. I did all of them. I did all the makers. I did all of them. and then if
you're checking the colours as you go, if you're seeing what the colours do as you go, that's a learning process of how to put colours together.
Yeah. So it's all been fun, and I did the same thing with the crofter's cap, and then this last year. So this last year, after having knit all of these hats, Elizabeth, with Linda's shearer's hat, I had a whole lot of natural colors that were just around. And I saw the pattern, and it was going to be longer on me, and I knew it was going to be longer on me. So I did one where I sort of played around with the natural colors, and I dropped a shade in order to, I had 5, I think it called for 6, and I had 5 colors. So I did it as a 5-color hat. And then I did it again, and I did the brim as a fold back brim with the ribbing underneath. And then I think I ended up knitting it 4 times, because I knit it 3 different times, like doing variations on the pattern. And then I got your kit in the mail, and then I was like, well, this one I'll knit the way it's supposed to be knit. So that it wasn't until I got yours that I actually knit it according to instructions. But yours is the hat that I wear the most often now.
It's comfy yarn.
Yeah, it's great. It's comfortable. I got a great big pom-pom on the top of it.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, that I wear with it. And yes, I wear that hat all the time. But yeah, now we have a hall closet where I have bins, you know, for everyone has a bin for their hats and gloves and things. And there's 4 of us in the family, and there's a bin for everyone else in the family on the floor, and then on the shelf there's 3 for me with just stuff it's opened, it's turned so that the opening faces outward instead of facing upward, so everything's stacked in the bin, and then things are stacked on top of the thing. And I opened it before I came on this trip, and I was like, I have a problem.
So it's just hats you've done?
Oh no, it's hats.
So
I do gloves, and I've done cowls
and scarves and
shawls. And now, see, my problem is that I spent.
You can do socks.
I don't like knitting socks.
Leg warmers.
Oh, leg warmers. I do love a leg warmer, but no, my thing is well, Wilma's pattern, Wilma's ripples. I did 9 pair of those.
Yeah. Oh God.
I got my jar.
When do you work?
This is my work, Elizabeth. This is the wonderful thing. So I have a jar of Periclus that I used to just. I just knit 9 pair of those. Yeah. Gave a bunch of them away for Christmas. Yeah. But my thing is, I'm always doing these small projects. So I'm like, I need to start doing sweaters and cardigans and things. So that's, I'm trying to focus on that, because I do things like come here or get the annual, and I see your beautiful sweater that you designed.
You need to do the sea breeze.
Whatever,
you need to do the sea breeze.
Yeah, I guess.
It's like 2 jumpers in one.
I know. It's huge. Yeah, I could probably clear out quite a bit of yarn.
I actually enjoyed knitting that.
Yeah.
Because there's no shaping.
Yeah, it's basically like a rectangle with
just,
sleeves, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it looks nice and, comfy and... Anyway, enough about my issues, okay? So you were patron. Was it 2019 for Shetland Wool Week? 2018. It was before I came.
Yeah, 2018. Yeah.
So how was that?
I enjoyed that.
Yeah?
Yeah. Seeing what everybody did with the hats, because it was a really simple pattern in it.
Yeah.
And you really couldn't go wrong. Mm-hmm. So seeing all the colours that folk did in the hat was really interesting. And just figuring out how dedicated people are to knitting the hat. They go
pointed look at me.
and on and on. I did eventually go back and knit one each in my Handspun yarn. I'd done Hazel's one, but I hadn't done any other ones. And so I have one in my Handspun yarn in every hat.
All of them.
Except my one.
Really?
Yeah.
Why haven't you done your own?
So I gave it away as a Christmas present.
Oh. Well, you have some yarn in here. You can get started.
I could start.
Yeah, you need to, and then you can get like some display heads and
have them. It has to be done. It has to be done.
Yeah.
I just sit in a box.
So yours was the Merry Dancers Tory. Merry Dancers Tory.
Yeah.
And you made a point in the pattern that this is not Fair Isle.
It's not Fair Isle.
Yeah. So why is it not Fair Isle?
It was a copy of a fisherman's cap. The same design as they knit in Fair Isle.
Okay.
So it's a style of a garment.
Okay.
From a period in time, but it's knitted in yell.
Okay. And
it is not the patterns that are in it is not the patterns that they knitted in Fair Isle. It was 3 row patterns. It's all 3-row patterns.
Yeah,
What
they're
we
like
call the
little
pretty
squares.
patterns. I put three rows together and to make a 9-row, 9-stitch square.
Right.
Just to make it a little bit different.
Uh-huh.
You never knit exactly the same thing twice, so you do something different with it. And it was on a dark background, so it was the cap that the skipper wore one in bright colours.
Okay.
The rest of the crew wore dark colours.
Okay.
So in bad weather,
Like we're having
like
right
we're
now.
having right now, in an open boat, an oars, or if you were really lucky, if you could put up a sail. But if the wind was too much, that sail had to come down.
Yeah.
You were listening to the skipper. So you listened to the voice that came out of the bright coloured hat. So reasons for
Yeah.
everything. So yeah, the patterns that were in that were not typical that came off of Fair Isle.
Okay.
They have a set of patterns that are, if you can recognise them, you can. But then, and Shetland didn't knit anything more than a 5 or 7 stitch pattern, row pattern, up until the 1920s.
Oh wow.
And then we started knitting what Fair Isle was knitting.
Fair Isle was doing.
And then the patterns got bigger. We punched patterns we made up patterns, we must have done. Copied them from other places. And we punched we copied a lot of the Norwegian patterns in the Second World War. When the men were coming over with the Shetland bus. So we have the big patterns, the 25, 27, 31, 33.
Yeah, like the
row
Norwegian
patterns,
stars
the bigs,
and snowflake
the big ones.
kind of ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Fair Isle didn't knit a pattern bigger than 17 rows. So anything bigger than that is not.
Then that was a later import, we'll call it.
Yeah. But at the same time, all the pretty patterns that we knit most of them were knitted in Fair Isle as well. They were knitted in Faroe, in Iceland, in Norway, Sweden, Estonia, and the Baltic states.
Yeah,
they're universal to North Atlantic.
This region of the world had a lot of people moving around between it. From farther back.
So we're not isolated and remote.
Right.
We're in the middle of a North Atlantic region.
Yeah, my husband every now and then will say, "Oh, it's just this island in the middle of the North Atlantic," and I'm like, "The North Sea." And I'm, no, it's a cultural crossroads, Adam. We get people from all over coming through, and especially when the fishing was still.
And the fishing was, but then the merchant ships did the same thing.
Yeah.
Things coming out of the Baltic came up the North Sea and round the top. And down. They didn't go through the English Channel. They came back through the English Channel.
Okay.
But they did a circle round, so they passed Shetland. Anything coming out of Norway came down past us. Anything coming out of Russia came out and down past us. So yeah.
It's a very interesting place to be, I think.
Yeah.
With all the intersections coming through. Do you work with the Perimakers?
Yeah. I started working with one of the schools just before COVID, and we'll be starting again next year.
Okay.
Our school's not done it this year.
Yeah.
But we're starting again next year.
Nice. So that's, of course, the group where the established knitters go into the school and teach the upper elementary children who are interested how to knit.
Yeah.
And is it the same sort of process where you start them on like different small garments and they progress through?
Most of us started on just knitting a small strip, learning to knit stitches, purl stitches, ribs, things like that. Do a little bit of lace in, and you can top it off with a bit of Fair Isle. So they learn that fast.
Nice.
And then they can go on to knit really something that they want to knit. But it's learning the basics.
Yeah.
And learning a Shetland style basics. So they have the knitting belts. They learn how to hold their needles and their yarn to get a position that they're knitting in that gives you speed.
So how has that been for you? How's that experience been?
Well, I didn't do an awful lot of weeks. We started late in the season, and we came to a grinding halt one day.
Yeah,
when COVID hit. Schools are closed. Couldn't even get into the school to get the boxes out. It was sort of nuts. But yeah, you get children that are interested, that want to learn. So they do. And you get that basics. I mean, it doesn't matter if they don't go home and don't, after they're done the stunt, if they don't go and start anything else. They've done their basics, and they've done their basics at an age where they suck up information.
Yeah.
So they can come back later.
And pick it up again
when they're interested, because they leave that age and go into the secondary schools and teenage years, and most of them do not want to be knitting.
They want to be out with the boys.
They want to be out with the boys. But after they get past that stage, they have the information, they have the knowledge that they can go and start.
Come back to it again.
And but they're learning, well, if they're in a class with me, they're not learning off a pattern. They're making up their own pattern, they're making up their own garment themselves. Even though it's something simple.
Yeah.
You want something that's so a size, and you got your tension for that, so you have your stitches for that, and you knit you knit on.
You work it up. What are your thoughts on sort of the state of knitting in the islands at the moment?
Well, from the 1970s, when oil arrived, it arrived sometime there, then a lot of the knitting stopped, because folk were going out, women especially, were going out to work, and there was jobs, and there was well-paid jobs, so you could, like I did, give up this knitting. Didn't last long with me. I picked it up again. Well, I picked up the spinning again. But still at the same time, there's always knitting around here. You kind of miss knitting in Shetland. So if anybody has an interest in it, they will find a way to knit. And since the 70s and right through to now, a lot of people are continued knitting, but for their own use.
Okay.
And they've knitted really, really nice garments. So for that, I don't see any reason why we don't have. We need to keep the knowledge of professional knitters, because we're still not hobby knitters. We're still not knitting as a hobby knitter. I mean, a lot of folk here will knit off patterns, but we'll change the pattern. Do it our way. Instead of knitting things in pieces, we'll put it all together and knit it all in one, because we don't like sewing up, and we can graft, so it's not a chore. We can figure out garments, and they're easy. Figuring out garments are easy once you've figured it out. It's all easy once you figure it out.
Yeah.
You put into practice. They knit the same garment 6 times, 10 times.
Yeah.
You
figure
out a basic garment shape, and then you can put anything into that.
Yeah, the different patterns you
want. Different patterns, different techniques, different kinds of stitches. Yeah. If you're using the same yarn all the time, you know your tensions, and you can do your tensions for different types of stitches. And then it's just your tension.
Yeah, it was Alison Rendell did a great class at Shetland Wool Week this last year that was knitting Mac in the Shetland way. Yeah. And it was like starting from your tension and your measurements,
Yeah.
everything you needed to know to
Yeah.
do a garment. And I was in the class thinking, this is brilliant. And also, this is easy. Like,
Yeah.
it's so straightforward.
Yeah.
Once you know how,
Once you know how.
once you know the proportions and
Yeah.
the everything, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, you really can just do this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a magnificent
Sticking
class.
that leap and deciding.
And just
that
doing
you
it.
can. And if it turns out wrong,
Oh well.
it turns out wrong.
Yeah, you just pull
Take
it
the
out.
needles out and
I know.
rip
It's
the yarn
not
back.
it's not high stakes knitting. Yeah, you can just pull things out. It's okay. We like
Yeah.
to knit. It's okay to knit it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like swatches. We don't do swatches.
Yeah, just knit a
If you
hat.
well, what we used to do before we were knitting hats, we would start an all over to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you pick your colours and you decide if one colour doesn't look right, you just pull the wires out and rip back a few rows, put
And try
another
it
colour
again.
in.
Mm-hmm.
You pick a pattern to start with, and then when you've done that, you pick a pattern that will look good on top of that,
Uh-huh.
and keep going. If it doesn't look good, you pull the wires out and rip it back a bit. It's not a problem.
And I think that, see, I have a theory about this, because so many people, and I was one of them in the world, are so reluctant to pull back their knitting. And it's down to the yarn. It's because,
Yeah.
you know, if you're knitting in an acrylic or
Yeah.
a smooth yarn and you start pulling out, it runs away from you.
Yeah.
And it's, what are you supposed to do? It becomes this all day affair to try and bring stitches up and fix it and everything. But the Shetland wool is so wonderful about just staying.
It just stays.
You just pull your needles
Yeah.
out, pull back where you need to, and put them back in and
Yeah.
carry on. And I just think, wow, like how much mental energy and angst is lost because we're using these awful acrylic
and super
icky
soft.
yarn.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my little wool soapbox moment.
And it is. I mean, the Shetland yarn is a different yarn
Yeah.
from the most of what you can buy
Mm-hmm.
in other places.
Yeah, it's wonderful stuff. It has its uses. It's wonderful for what it does. And
It's
as you
alive,
say,
but it does what you want it to do.
yeah. And as you say, like, the same animal gives you so many different ways to use the yarn, you know,
Yeah,
so many different
and
types
qualities.
of wool that you can use it for. Wonderful. So any thoughts on the knitting community as we go forward here? Any advice or any
The
you know,
wider knitting community,
the Shetland knitting community, the
Shetland-
wider world?
the Shetland knitting community, I think, is going to do okay. There's got so many youngsters knitting and learning from us oldies. We learned from generations back.
Mm-hmm.
And so the youngsters now, it's missed one generation.
Mm-hmm.
My children could have learned from me and really didn't much. They learned to spin. Two of my girls can spin really well. They didn't want to knit at all, so they knitted really tight. I gave up. And in school, they didn't want to knit. They're knitting in school, but the school they went to had spinning wheels in the class.
Oh,
And they just went to the spinning wheels,
okay.
and they taught the anybody in the class that wanted to spin, they taught them how to spin.
Oh, wow.
So years later, the knitting teacher apologised to me. She says, I never did teach any of your two lasses to knit,
Because they were just at the spinning wheel.
because they took over half the class and taught them spinning, and that was in two different classes.
That's
And
hilarious.
so I had plenty of time to learn
Mm-hmm.
the rest how to knit. And I said, it's okay. I says, I tried to learn them to knit and they didn't want to, so I gave up. But they could knit a stitch,
Uh-huh.
so they can come
They
back.
have the basics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they can come back and and do it.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to. They're not going to be.
Everybody has their personal preferences.
One of my lasses is really, really good at colour.
Uh-huh.
And I test everything out on her. Say, does this look okay? Who's it for? She would start for, no, I don't like you. I wouldn't wear you. I said, it's not for you. Well, who's it for? So yeah, then it would suit that age. Yeah, it would suit them. Yeah, or change that colour. It's weird. So she is so good at colour. The other one not so much, but she's really good at teaching. They've both taught spinning classes for me. The other one is really good at teaching carding, hand cards.
So do you think then, so as you said though, it did sort of skip a generation here with that first transition to the oil jobs. Yeah. Do you think that gap is closing though?
I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
Because the young ones at the pre-makers now are going home to their parents who did not learn to knit a lot, and but they know some. So between the two, the children can now learn their mothers. So they can pick it up again.
Yeah, hopefully.
It's teaching them to knit as a professional, not as a hobbyist. With those you get methods, that across. Right?
To really be thinking about it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just copying a pattern, studying a pattern.
Yeah. And they know it. They know that they can. They can know that they can design, and they'll tell you what they want. You say, like, what do you want to knit? I want to knit this garment, and it has to be like this, and it has to have this colours in it, and I want this patterns in it.
Right, and you're like,
so
okay,
they're designing.
Yeah, and they're too young to be scared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you for your time today.
No problem.
A big thank you again to Elizabeth for her hospitality and for sitting down with me to talk about her work with Shetland Wool and textiles. It was a real pleasure for me, and I hope you all enjoyed sitting in on our chat. If you would like to learn more about Elizabeth, you can find her through her website, shetlandhandspun.com. A few more things before I go. First, the Mac and Our Way Through Shetland tours for 2023 are officially sold out. I am so thrilled and really looking forward to traveling with those of you who are joining us this year. The first set of tours kicks off in mid-April, which is feeling really close. If you are interested in traveling with us in 2024, we do keep a list of names of those who are interested, and you get one of the early options to sign up. To get on that list, please send your full name and email to info@islandvista.co.uk, and Jolene, my Shetland-born travel partner, will get you on the list. Second, some of you may have watched the Woolly Winter Countdown videos over on the Pearl Together YouTube channel with Jana and I opening our Woolly Advent calendars together during December. The day this podcast goes live, I'll be filming another episode with Jana. We're going to talk about my trip to Shetland and Wales, as well as other things. That video should go out on the Pearl Together channel in a day or two, so check that out on YouTube. Finally, while I was in Shetland, I was able to meet with the designer for the 2023 Shetland Hogmanay box. I've seen the sketches and the swatches, and it has totally exceeded my expectations. I can tell you that there will be 6 yarn producers involved this year, with one designer incorporating all of the yarns into a Fair Isle project for your home. There will be 2 colorways to choose from, and I will post pictures that give you a general idea of the colors without spoiling anything. The boxes were such a success last year that this year I'm expanding the number of boxes, so hopefully more of you will be able to get one. More details about the boxes will come in the following months, and the pre-orders will go on sale in early May. Next episode, I'll be bringing you an interview with Rosamund Black of the Welsh Textile Museum. She has an impressive knowledge of the regional textile history, and I cannot wait to share her thoughts with you. In the meantime, thank you for listening and knitting with me for a bit. If you'd like to support the show, check out the show notes for ways to make that happen. Special thanks to my patrons, Knit New Haven and Morehouse Farm, for sponsoring the podcast. The show notes are also where you will find links to any reference materials I use as I prepared the show, so be sure to check those out. Find me on my social media accounts as I Thought I Knew How, except on Twitter, where it's just Thought I Knew How. The groups on various platforms are all called I Thought I Knew How Podcast. Until next time, may you be blessed with stitches that never drop, yarn without joins, and plenty of time to knit.